Hey YouTube, and welcome to my first edition of Franchise Fridays. Basically, every Friday I will review a franchise of movies as individual movies and then the series as a whole, picking out the strongest and the weakest of the franchise. So being that last week Fast 5 was released and I reviewed it on Tuesday, it seems fitting that the first franchise to be reviewed is the Fast and the Furious series, which includes the Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, and Fast and Furious. But not 5 because, like I just said, I just reviewed it. So we shall start with The Fast and the Furious from 2001. The movie stars Paul Walker as Brian O'Connor, a cop who goes undercover in a gang of street racers in order to flush out a gang of truck hijackers. However, as his connection with the racers grow, he starts to question whose side he's actually on. Now, this was one of my favorite movies to watch growing up, and it still is. The acting is solid, nothing groundbreaking, but not horrendous either. Everyone does their part well, and it all comes out believable, especially the racer gang's family-like appearance. Plus, this was the movie that jump-started Vin Diesel's career. Also, the racing scenes are pretty intense, especially the climax of the movie. However, I do have one slight problem with the movie. Usually in a movie's timeline, there's the climax where the stakes are raised and things get intense. Then there's an aftermath where remaining characters reflect on what just happened and foreshadow towards future events. Here we get the climax, and once it's over, the movie just ends. It's just a small pet peeve that I have, though. It's just that I like my movies to follow the pattern of establishment, build-up, climax, and aftermath. But that's just me. But overall, The Fast and the Furious is a solid action movie. I give it an 8 out of 10. Next up is the 2003 sequel, Too Fast, Too Furious, which once again stars Paul Walker as Brian O'Connor. O'Connor has been on the run from the law after the events of the first movie. However, while staying in Miami, the FBI finally catches up to him and gives him a choice. He can either go to jail, or he can go back undercover to bust a drug lord and in return have his record clean. Now, Too Fast, Too Furious is one of those rare occurrences where the sequel is on par with the original. It's just as exciting and entertaining as the first, but funnier due to the addition of probably my favorite character in the entire franchise, Roman Pierce, played by Tyrese Gibson. And just like in the first, where the racer gang's relationship felt very real, Pierce and O'Connor's brotherly type relationship also feels very realistic. But probably the best part of this sequel is the opening race. It trumps the original's opening drag race in every way. Now, Too Fast, Too Furious isn't without its flaws. There are some pacing issues in the middle. There's also some cheesiness, and the villain is kind of dull. But the movie as a whole is very enjoyable and what a sequel should be. Just as fun and exciting as the first. I give Too Fast, Too Furious an 8 out of 10 as well. We now cut 3 years later to the third installment, The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. Tokyo Drift focuses on a completely new cast of characters led by Sean Boswell, played by Lucas Black. Basically, Boswell is a delinquent who gets busted in an illegal street race, and in order to avoid jail time, he's sent to Tokyo to live with his father. While there, he has a run-in with the local race legend and challenges him to a race, unaware that the style of race is something he has no prior experience in: drifting. After totaling the car loaned to him by another driver, Sean must pay off his debt by working in the Tokyo underworld while also trying to sharpen his unexisting drift skills. Now, when Tokyo Drift first came out, I was actually pretty excited. At the time, I had been playing a lot of Need for Speed and was really interested in the whole drifting style and wanted to see how it would carry out in film. And the result is another fun installment to the Fast and Furious franchise, but it does have some more problems. But we'll talk about the good stuff first. Once again, the racing is intense and keeps you on the edge of your seat, and the cars are beautiful as usual. But if you try to look past that, then you might be disappointed. The acting, it's pretty basic. In fact, more basic than the first two. Plus, the characters are just really plain. There's no real connection between these characters like in the previous two installments. And the story is pretty typical and cliched. But if you just want some fun racing without investment in story or characters, then you'd be pretty much set. I give Tokyo Drift a 7 out of 10. Finally, we end with 2009's Fast and Furious, also known as Fast and Furious 4. Fast and Furious reunites the cast from the original movie: Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, Jordana Brewster, and Michelle Rodriguez all come back to reprise their roles. In Fast and Furious, Brian O'Connor has become an FBI agent and is tracking down a drug cartel leader known as Braga. However, Dominic Toretto has a personal score to settle with Braga. Now the two must band together to stop their shared enemy. Now when this movie was first announced, I was pumped. The idea of the original cast returning was just perfect. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out the way I hoped it would. The movie just doesn't seem like a Fast and Furious movie. Granted, the race scenes are really fun, but the overall movie just feels more like the Miami Vice movie that was released in 2006. I'm not saying Fast and Furious is a bad movie, but when I hear the words Fast and Furious as the title, I expect lots of cars and a ton of intense racing, not half of a crime drama. So I give Fast and Furious a 7 out of 10. Now comes the portion where I grade the series as a whole. The Fast and Furious series is a franchise targeted to fans of gorgeous women, intense action, and beautiful cars. If you are a fan of two of those three things, then you're all set. As for the weakest and the strongest of the series, the weakest is a toss-up between Tokyo Drift and Fast and Furious, numbers 3 and 4. Normally I'd say 3 because it has no real place in the franchise with no returning characters from previous installments. But after rewatching 4, I'm actually tempted to say that it's the weakest simply because it doesn't feel like a Fast and Furious movie. Granted, 3 doesn't have any returning characters, but it still feels like a Fast and Furious movie. As for the strongest in the series, hands down, no contest, the original is the strongest of the franchise. I really shouldn't have to explain why, though. As for my final verdict on the series, the Fast and Furious franchise gets an 8 out of 10. And that concludes my first Franchise Friday. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe. Also, check me out on Facebook for more updates. This has been Beardmaster180, just reminding you that this has been my own personal opinion. You are in control of yours. Thanks for watching.